Peace. Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. Everybody who's coming in, come on in. Let me know how you feeling. Let me know how you doing. How was your day? How's your week so far? How's your night? Wherever you are on the planet, come in. Let me know where you are. What's going on with you? Hopefully everybody's feeling good. Hopefully you're blessed and you know you're blessed. Jennifer, what's up? How you feeling? Chanel, what's up? Getting ready for bed. Okay. All right. Cool. Awesome. Awesome. You know what, Chanel? Thank you for spending some time with us before you go to bed. Hopefully, you listen to us and get some positive energy so you can have sweet dreams. Thank you for joining us. Who else we got in the building? Who else we got here tonight? Y'all quiet tonight. Who else we got here? Hello, Jennifer. My day was good. My day was actually good. I had a good, productive day. I had a revelation about manifestation. I thought of some really cool stuff. I think I want to put it into a live stream. I want to do one more after this live stream. After this in a series of Maladies of the Avatars. I want to do one more, and then I'm going to talk about manifestation and time travel. If anybody's been watching my live streams for a little while, I used to have an obsession with astral projection and time travel. I remember I did a series when I first started doing these. I think it was 2020. I did a series about astral projection, and a lot of it talked a lot about time travel a lot too. And I had like a epiphany about time travel manifestation. So I think I'm gonna put it down on paper and break it down for y'all after I do the next part of Maladies of the Avatars. Tonight we're gonna be talking about Auset, who the Greeks refer to as Isis, and what she went through, which I think is a pretty cool story. I think we can learn a lot from that story. But today was a day where I kind of manifested something. I have been talking about trying to find a workspace where I can do these live streams because I'm kind of tired of just doing it in here. I feel cramped in here. I feel like I need more room, and I want to start doing classes in person again, teaching in person, face to face again. And so me and my sons were going to. We were in DC. We were out in DC, and we wanted to. I wanted to discuss with different bookstores how I can get my book in their shops in their stores. So I was looking for one bookstore, and all of a sudden I see this weird little place, and it had like the red, black, and green colors in the front, which is like the sign for like the African flag, which you see a lot in the black community among certain groups. And there was a quote about capitalism and racism on the front door, and there was a picture of like Muhammad Ali, but like Muhammad Ali when he was like a militant. So I said, okay, wow, this looks like an interesting place. Seems like my kind of place. So I went and knocked on the door. There was a guy who worked there. He was an Egyptian guy, really cool dude. And we talked about having me come in there and use that workspace. He had like a radio station he was operating out of there, a small radio station he was operating out of there. And he has like community gatherings, and he wanted to have people come in and teach. And I told him that I taught meditation. I gave him a copy of my book, and yeah, we hit it off. Seemed like a real cool person. Seemed like a real great opportunity. He offered me an opportunity to use the workspace. Of course, I told him that it would be an even exchange. Whatever he needed, let me know. But I may be, hopefully, thanks Adele. Hopefully, next time y'all see me on the next live stream, hopefully I'll be in that workspace. It'll be at night, which I think will add a real cool vibe to it. But I'll be there. Hopefully, I'll be there at night. It's in DC. I've never been to DC at night, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be cool. But that was awesome, kind of, because I felt kind of like well, it didn't have an African flag, but it had the colors for the African flag out front, the red, black, and the green. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, yeah, I think this might be my kind of vibe. So I went in there, and it was right. You got to look for people communicate in a lot of different ways, and you communicate a lot in symbols. So I was glad to go there and see those symbols. Well, I think the Bob Marley, yeah, he did wear the African flag a lot. I think the colors of Jamaica, I think, are green, yellow, and I think Jamaica is green, yellow, and red or something like that. But yeah, Bob Marley did wear those African colors quite a bit. You're right. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, it was cool. It was cool because I've been thinking about that for a long time and like kind of like praying for it, and it kind of like manifested, which I thought was really awesome. I like moments like that. So I wanna focus more on manifesting more of the things I want in life. I think we can all do it. So that's what I want to. After I do the next one, the next Maladies of the Avatar, which I'm gonna do about Jesus Christ, and then after that, I'll break that one down. I believe. I think that'd be pretty cool. But these Maladies of the Avatars, this Malady of the Avatar series, I like the idea. I want to do a book on it so I can go a little bit more in depth, because I think a lot of these stories with these mythical characters or these religious characters or these spiritual characters, a lot of them deal with and touch on. A lot of people deal with and touch on mental illness. A lot of these avatars and these god men and these spiritual leaders and these mythological characters were dealing with mental illness. So I think this series is kind of cool and important. Me too. When I heard that, me too. Trust me. I was trying to manifest that lottery ticket too. I was like, I got to get this. I gotta get this. But yeah, let's get started. We had a 7 minute mark. So what are we talking about tonight? In this series, Maladies of the Avatars, we're talking about individuals who consider to be divine, individuals who had a spiritual connection, or they were individuals who were believed to be incarnations of divine spirits. Say, for instance, like Krishna. Krishna was believed to be an avatar of the god Vishnu. Jesus Christ was supposed to be an avatar of the god Yahweh, or incarnation of the god Yahweh, or the son of Yahweh. Um, the Buddha, he was an individual who was considered to be a divine being who rose above despair and sadness and the cycle of life and death into nirvana, which is a state of ultimate bliss and awakening and awareness. And I wanted to kind of tap into these stories so that we could see that these individuals who we revere struggled from mental illness. The Buddha struggled with depression. Moses suffered from anxiety and what they call imposter syndrome. And this week we're going to deal with the story of a goddess in ancient Egypt, or what they call Kemet. And the goddess's name is Auset. The Greeks call her Isis. And this is a pretty cool story because it deals with things that can really break a person. The things that Isis dealt with could really break a person. And we've all dealt with some kind of loss. We've all dealt with the death of a loved one. So I think in the story, even though the story is symbolic and it talks about the changing and the movement of the seasons, if you look at the story from a literal standpoint and just analyze the characters and their story arcs, I think we can get something really powerful out of it. So I wanted to deal with the story a little bit. I thought that would be cool if we go in depth on that one. So let's get started. In ancient Egypt, they had two gods, a god and a goddess. Geb, who was the god of earth, Nut, who was the goddess of the night sky. These two divine beings made love, and they had 9 children called the Aeneid. The Aeneid were 9 divine gods. They were brothers and sisters who kind of symbolized the opposing forces of nature, light, dark, things of that nature. Isis and Osiris were brothers and sisters, but divine brothers and sisters. So they ended up getting married. Osiris became a king on planet Earth. As a king, he was an amazing ruler. He was a multidisciplinarian. He was a scientist, a mathematician, an astronomer, an astrologer. He was ever so wise. And when he ruled over Egypt at that time, he was an unbelievable ruler who brought peace to the land and who raised the land out of barbarianism and savagery into a civilization. He is the symbol, Asar or Osiris is the symbol of civilization. When you think of an individual who saved humanity, from barbarism, from wickedness, who brought law and balance and order. That is what Osiris symbolizes. And that's why he's so important to Egyptian theology. Now, Asar had a brother. In that time, ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt, there was a concept called Ma'at. Ma'at symbolizes balance, symbolizes order, symbolizes reciprocity. So if you have order, balance, reciprocity, which Asar was an avatar of that or a symbol of that, you also had chaos, which is Isfet. Isfet is chaos, disorder, injustice, imbalance, destruction, entropy, in other words. And this is just a part of the natural fabric of the nature of the universe. So if you have light, who is Asar, you would have darkness, who is Set. And Set is a being from which we get the name Satan, or so they say. So Set symbolized darkness in the human mind, darkness and decay in nature. And Set, he hated his brother. He hated Asar with a ruthless passion that decided that he wanted to take it upon himself to kill his own brother. He would see the people praise Asar and would become disgusted. He would see the people bow down to Asar and worship him as a god. And that angered him even more. And his thoughts became very, very venomous and destructive. And he decided that he would take his brother's life. But he had to figure out how to do it because Asar was so beloved of the people and was so powerful. He didn't want to make a mistake and fail. They say you only get one shot to go for the king's head. Because if you miss, you'll die. So he had to be very clever. And so Set, just like Satan, had to be very cunning and deceptive. One day, Asar or Osiris, he leaves his realm of Egypt and decides to travel the world because he wants to teach the rest of the world the science of civilization, the nature of reality, mathematics, science, medicine. And while he's gone, Set finds a way to get his measurements, the measurements of his body, his height, the length of the width of his shoulders, the length of his legs. He got all those measurements. No one is quite sure how, but he did get those measurements, and he decided that he wanted to find a way to kill his brother. And he had 72 conspirators that worked with him. In ancient Egypt, the number 72 appears many times. It's considered to be a sacred and a symbolic number. But anyway, Osiris returns, and when he returns, Set says, "Hey, you know what? You're back, my brother. We missed you. We're gonna throw a party for you. This is gonna be fun." So Set took the measurements of Osiris when Osiris wasn't around, and he made a box, a very elaborate, beautiful box, the same height, the same width. As a matter of fact, this is the first coffin, if you will. But he made it look very beautiful, and it was very ornate. And he put gold and silver all over it, and jewels all over it. It was bedazzled. So when they threw the party, Set said, "Let's play a game." And Set said, "This is a box that I made, and it's made of gold. It's all this silver and jewelry all over it. Whoever could fit perfectly in this box, hell, I'll give it to you. Just as a gift. Won't this be fun?" Gotta be careful with these dudes that say phrases like, "Won't this be fun?" So everybody at the party, the 72 conspirators who are there, they step in one by one and they get in the box, but it doesn't quite fit. One is too tall, one is too short, one is too wide, one is too thin. Doesn't quite fit. And then finally Set says, "Hey, Asar, you ain't got in the box yet. Why don't you get in there real quick and just chill? See if it fit. You never know. It might be yours, bro." So Asar got into the box. And as soon as he got into the box, it fit perfectly. And then, boom, Set closed the box and then sealed it with molten lead. And eventually, Asar died. And Set, being the evil demon that he was, didn't bury his brother properly. What he did was he took that box down to the Nile River and threw it into the river. The waters washed it down the river. Now, Isis or Auset, his wife, Asar's wife, was far away in another land. But she could feel the moment where her husband died. She could feel it in her soul because their connection was more than just a physical connection. It was a divine connection. It was a spiritual connection. So the moment that her husband's life was snuffed out, she felt it and immediately dropped to her knees and began to cry. She began to cry and scream and weep. But she didn't know where Asar was. She went back to Egypt looking for him, but he was gone. Set was the ruler now. So she had to flee from Egypt, and she began walking. And someone told her, said, listen, we saw your husband thrown into a casket, and the casket has been pushed down the Nile River. So she went about looking for it, going from land to land, following the path of the river, trying to find her lost husband, Asar. And as she's going from land to land trying to find him, she begins to cry out. And it's this really interesting passage that I found where it says, I go about to every temple of thine, yet thou comest not forth to me. Gods and men before the faces of gods are weeping for thee at the same time when they behold me. Lo, I invoke thee with wailing that reacheth high as heaven. So she is torn by this, screaming so loud the sound of her voice reaches the heavens. But there's still no respite for her pain. She lost her husband and was emotionally broken. And then one day while she was wandering throughout the land, she heard that her husband's coffin had reached that land. And her husband's coffin had floated down the river until it came to a tree and actually hit what they call a tamarisk tree. Now, in ancient Egypt, the tamarisk tree is a tree that has these very symbolic and magical properties. The tamarisk tree is symbolized in something called the jed. The jed is a pillar that means stability. It also is a symbol for the tamarisk tree. It's also a symbol for the spine of Asar, or your spine. So your spine will be considered a jed pillar. It gives your body stability. You can move around because of your spine. So the jed pillar was a symbol of the human spine, but also a symbol of the tamarisk tree. And his body hit the tamarisk tree. It stopped floating down the river, hit the tamarisk tree, and then the tree became very, very big, started growing real big, and it grew around the coffin. Now, there's a famous picture, I don't know if you guys ever saw it, where there was a young boy who was called to war. He was off in the woods one day. He was riding his bike. He put his bike against the tree. He got called to war, so he had to run back home immediately, change his clothes, and got drafted into World War II. He went away. He came back years later, and the tree had grown around his bike and actually lifted his bike up off the ground. So that same thing happened with the coffin in the tree, the tamarisk tree. The tree grew really big and really huge around the coffin. So the coffin was stuck in the tree. And Auset didn't know how to get it out of the tree. She didn't have the tools to get it out of there. So she sat there weeping and crying. And then the queen of that land saw her and saw how beautiful she was and saw her weeping and was in tears. So the queen and all the women that were with her went and sat down and spoke to her, asked her why she was crying. And Auset told her essentially what happened. Her husband was dead and that she thought his body had floated down the river and was engulfed in that tamarisk tree. So the woman who was a queen commanded that the tree get cut down. The tree got cut down. They pulled the coffin out of the tree and gave the coffin to Auset. And then Auset called her sister Nephthys. And the two of them began to recite a magical spell over the body. Now keep in mind that Isis is not only a goddess of femininity, goddess of motherhood, but she was also a goddess of magic. And she was a goddess of power. So she's over the body of her husband and whispering to him and speaking to him and using magic spells with her sister Nephthys, and then another god who the ancient Egyptians referred to as Jehudi, who the Greeks called Thoth. They all began to come and stand around him and utter these words of magic and power until eventually they resurrected Asar. Now, Asar was the first resurrected savior, died and came back from the dead. However, because he had died already, he could not remain in the land of the living. Could not remain in the land of the living for long. So he spent one beautiful night making love to his wife, and then he had to go back into the grave. And then she buried him. And she hid the body so that she could protect him, because in ancient Egypt, they believed that the body still contained elements of the soul. So she wanted to make sure his body was not desecrated like it was before. And then Set found out about it. Set. And Set made up his mind he was going to find the coffin with the body of Osiris. That he was going to find it and he was going to tear the body to pieces. So one night when he was hunting by night, he came across the coffin, dug up the grave, pulled the body out of the coffin and tore the body into 14 pieces. And they say that he scattered the 14 pieces throughout the land. One over here by this mountain, one over here by the river, one over here in the trees, one over here in the temple. Scattered his body all over the place. And Isis, once again, horribly traumatized, falls apart, and is so saddened by this that she begins to scream and howl and wail. And her screams were so fierce and so raw that a child heard the screams and died. That's how much pain was being ripped out of her soul. Is that the children who heard her screaming were hurt and sick, and one child even died. Now, this is an intense moment of mourning, an intense moment of grief, and we've all lost loved ones. I lost my father when I was 21. And you know what? In a sense, we all do the exact same thing as Auset. When we lose our loved ones, what do? We weep and we wail and we moan and we seek them. We seek them in others. We seek that relationship in our relationships with other people. We seek them in interactions with other people. We go to the same places they went to, and we recreate the relationships we had with them over and over and over again. Because we're trying to find some kind of way to bring that person back to us. And we're using whatever techniques we possibly have. And many of the techniques that we use to bring our loved ones back, are kind of magical in a sense. But sometimes it becomes like dark magic when you can't let go. And you're in a relationship with somebody who reminds you of the individual that passed away, or you're surrounded by situations and surrounded by things that remind you of the other person, and it's eating you alive. It's not helping you to cope and mourn, it's eating you alive. She wanted to keep her husband alive, couldn't let him go. She couldn't let him go. And because she couldn't let him go, she brought him back for one night, for one evening, and that deepened her pain. It deepened her pain, and she wasn't able to release that pain. So what did she do? Being a goddess of magic, she decided she was going to use her magic in a very powerful way. She decided that she was going to resurrect her husband one more time. She gathered all the pieces of his body from across the land, put them back together again, except one piece, his phallus, which she could not find. Then she decided that she was going to resurrect her husband in a new way. And she made love to him, even though he did not have a phallus. And she became impregnated with their son Horus. This was an immaculate conception, a divine birth. So when she gave birth to Horus, Horus was his resurrection. And when she rebuilt him the second time, she used the magic spell so that he wouldn't die again, but still he could not remain in the land of the living. She had to let him go this time. But when she let him go, he became the ruler of the Duat. The Duat is what they call the underworld. This is what happens in life when you are mourning something, whether it be the end of a relationship, whether it be, the conclusion of a job. Sometimes you can't let go. But you could take that pain and pieces of your broken heart and put them back together and build something even more powerful. She found a man who she loved more than anything, who was a god. And he fell apart, like many of us do. And she helped to put him back together, and he became even more powerful as the complete total ruler of the Duat. He became a ubiquitous universal God, a being that decided who went to heaven and who did not, who was punished in the afterlife, and who rose to the eminence of heaven. He became even more powerful than ever. And how did he become more powerful than ever? Well, he became more powerful than ever because of the love of a good woman, but also because of that woman's capacity to let go and his capacity to let go. Quite often when somebody passes away, when something ends, we don't let go. And so she was stuck in a state of perennial mourning. But she realized that she could bring him back through a son. And that's something I think we need to learn. Quite often we can bring back the things that we lose, but in different forms. You might lose a loved one, but you could bring them back in a song. You could bring them back in a memory. You could bring them back in building a school. You could bring them back in writing a book. You could bring them back in living a dream. But you can let them go in a healthy way. Holding on to a loved one that's passed away is like holding on to pain. I know from personal experience. I lost my father. My father died when I was 21. I've told you guys that story about how I couldn't let go. And I was seeking the comfort of my father's presence through alcoholism and pill popping and every other form of destructive behavior you could think of. I couldn't let go and I couldn't bring him back. But I decided that I could bring my father back. How could I bring my father back? Brought my father back through trying to gain knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Brought my father back by trying to become a man he could be proud of. Brought my father back by being sane and pursuing the things he told me to pursue. He wanted me to pursue healthy relationships. He wanted me to have a family. And now I got my own family. I got 2 beautiful sons. And they got that McCrory face. They got the McCrory cheekbones. You know, my oldest son is tall and skinny like my dad was. My youngest son looks like me when I was a baby, just a little bit lighter. So I resurrected my father in a sense. Many of us have to become resurrectors of our ancestors. We have to let them go into the duat, the afterworld, and the afterlife, or what have you, or into the memories, or what have you. But we could bring them back in a sense of how we live. Your brother can't let go of your mom's death. Many of us can't. It's a hard thing to do. It's a very hard thing to do. It's a very hard thing to do to let go of somebody who you love, especially a parent, because we as children, we know that death is inevitable. We know we're going to lose our parents, but at the same time, you don't believe it. You know it, but don't believe it. Like, for instance, my mother comes to me now. My mother is 65. My mother comes to me and she's like, yeah, when I die. And I'm like, Ma, I don't want to have this conversation. Like, I know she's going to pass away one day. But I don't want to talk about that. I know it's going to be real, but I don't believe it. Right. Bring them back. Bring them back in how you live. Bring them back and bring peace to yourself. You lost a baby girl? Oh, Adele, I'm sorry to hear that. Really sorry to hear that. That got to be the toughest one. Losing a child has got to be the toughest one. Stillborn, that's the toughest one. Sorry to hear that. Sending you love and positive energy. But, you know, I always say that I don't believe in death. I don't believe in death. I believe that, you know, the spirits of those that passed away live on in some way, shape, or form. You can't create or destroy anything. But I believe that us trying to live in a state of ma'at, balance, harmony with things around us, you know, you start to see them. Yeah. Yeah, you're breaking generations of toxic behavior, and you said your mother died when you were 5. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, and that stays with you, especially when you lose a loved one at that early of an age. You lose a loved one at that early of an age. That's tough, very tough, and it changes you. You know, I know it changed me when I was 21, so I can only imagine losing somebody like that when you're young. But you know, you have to understand they do literally live in you. You know, the memory of all your ancestors is etched in your DNA. And you'll find yourself doing certain things and not understanding why, and you have certain patterns and certain things you like, certain things you don't like. That's from your DNA. That's the spirit of those before you that's still living in you. You're a vessel for the ancestors, and that's why I believe it's important to heal. It's important for us to heal because it does work magic. Our ancestors who are living in the afterlife, you know, I think many of them are still unhealed. They need us to heal so we can heal them. You think they want to see their pain continue for generations and generations and generations? If our ancestors do continue to exist in another time and space, but they can still see us and communicate with us in some way, you think they want to see their mistakes get repeated over and over again? You think they want to see the seeds of negativity that circumstance has planted into your life continue into the lives of your children? And definitely, because who knows when somebody's going to decide to break the curse. So I'm glad you've made the decision to break that toxic pattern, Chanel. That's beautiful. You're healing yourself and you're healing all those that passed away before you who can see you. And they appreciate your work. They appreciate excuse me, they appreciate what you're doing. They love you for what you're doing. Keep doing it. Heal. Heal so you can heal all the hundreds of years of people who suffered before you. Thousands of years, millions of years. The pain is a part of life, but certain kinds of pain, the pain of, unhealthy behaviors and toxic behaviors, that pain we can heal. We stop it and our ancestors stop weeping. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. I believe, my ancestors are watching from the other side. I think my father's watching me. I think I want to make my father proud. I'll be honest with you. I don't really talk about this a whole lot, but I want to make my father proud. Absolutely. And I want to heal too. So he could see what life would be like without the things he went through. So looking back, I think my father had to deal. I think my father dealt with depression. I think my father was depressed. Adele, thank you. Thank you so much. But yeah, I think my father was maybe dealing with depression somewhat. And I think that me overcoming it, I think that's something that he thinks is beautiful and amazing. And also too, keep in mind, in ancient Kemet, these beings, these concepts, these gods, that they call netter, these are principles that we all have within us. The principle of magic that Isis had exists within us. The power to bring back the ones we love, that exists within us. The power to bring back the things that we lost back into our world, that lives within us. The power to overcome loss, that lives within us. All of Isis's or Auset's attributes that are wonderful and beautiful and powerful and inspiring, that helped her to survive this horrible loss and the death of her husband, the mutilation of her husband, and the ability to bring life into someone else. All that stuff is real. It's symbolic, but it's real. How many times have you met a person who has been broken? Just like Asar was ripped to pieces by his brother who hated him. That happens all the time. Where I'm from, in the hood, I met plenty of kids who have been ripped apart. Symbolically ripped apart. Hurt, traumatized. And then just as Isis was able to use her magic and her power to help the healing process and put the person back together again, put Asar back together again. That's what we're doing. And it's important that we see it that way. Asar was a god. So when you see these young children who are broken, these men and these women who are broken, you got to see the God in them and use your own God, your own magic, your own divinity to resurrect the God that's in them. They believe that all of us were Asar. When you were initiated into the temple system, you got the name Asar. So if I was initiated in ancient Kemetic spiritual science, my name would be Asar Devon, just to show that attribute exists within all of us. The attribute of righteousness and justice and brilliance and genius, and also the attribute of magic. We are magical. We put others together who are broken. We put ourselves back together after we are broken. And we bring new life into the world. We bring forth an immaculate conception. And when it's talking about an immaculate conception, it don't necessarily mean the birth of a savior. An immaculate conception could be an idea. You create a pure idea and bring that forth into the world. That is you bringing forth new life. That's an immaculate conception. Imagine you create an idea that can help other people and save other people. Help other people rise up, encourage other people. You might write the song or come up with the lyric or write the book or tell the story or give the speech that might inspire those around you. And that's an immaculate conception too. Because you're reproducing the beauty and the divinity within yourself. You're reproducing the God in you and the others around you without sex. This is non-sexual reproduction. That's immaculate conception. And you have the power to do that. Stop relegating your divinity to somewhere in outer space, somewhere up in heaven. You can do that right here, right now. That's why I like the ancient Egyptian theology, because a lot of ancient Egyptian theology doesn't deal with heaven way up there in the sky. It deals with attributes and elements of this world. African spirituality, a lot of it deals with this world. There was no separate space for the ancestors in African spirituality. The ancestors are right here. The ceremonies that we hold celebrating the ancestors and celebrating life is right here. You notice in that story, Isis was a goddess. She lived on Earth. Isis was a goddess. Her husband died. She went looking for a husband on Earth. She wasn't concerned about no afterlife. And one can make the argument there was no afterlife. Not until Asar became the god of the first resurrected savior. And when he became the resurrected savior, one could argue that it was then that, the doo-wop was introduced. But I could be wrong. But I think it's very important for us to realize that we have the capacity for immaculate conception. So that's what we're going to do. That's our mission, to go out into the world and to create a better world, a better place, and to heal the people who are broken apart. How did she heal? She healed them with magic. And there's a magic spell. If you read ancient Egyptian magic spells, there's actually a magic spell where Isis would tie her hair, right, to the hair of her sister, Nephthys. Excuse me. And when they tied their hair together, the spell said that the two banks of the river would be brought together. What did that mean? That means the world of the living and the dead were brought together when they tied their hair together. That's called Isis's knot, or Auset's knot. And we do that every single day. We bring the world of the living and the world of the dead together. The dead don't have to necessarily be over there somewhere, relegated to outer space, away from us. They can be here with us. They are here with us. They're in us. And I told this story before. I don't know if I told it here, but yeah, it's not that hard to find your ancestors. You'll be surprised. I've had some interesting spiritual experiences. You'll be surprised. The minute you go looking for your ancestors, you'll find them. You'll start seeing them. Literally, I've seen some interesting things. I had some interesting experiences in deep meditation trances where I summoned spirits. You go looking for them, they come find you. Like, hey, you paying attention to me? I would say be careful with it, because it's a little unnerving. Be careful with it. Get somebody who knows what they're doing. But you'll be surprised. You'll feel that presence. You'll feel that energy. Sometimes you'll even see. If that's not too scary for you. But yeah, I definitely believe in all of that stuff. I've had the experiences to back this stuff up. The ancestors are still here. You can call them out. You can call them out in you as well. Sometimes I call out my father's energy in me. My father was a guy who was very assertive. Sometimes I got to call that out of me. Like, Dad, I want to be like you. Give me your assertiveness. Give me your strength. Give me your leadership. Give me your seriousness. Give me your energy so people know I'm not playing around. Sometimes I got to bring my father's spirit out of me. And you can do that as well. It's all magic, but it's not magic in the sense that we've been taught. It ain't spooky or evil. It's just you being you on a higher level. When you are you on a higher level, that is magic. Magic happens. And you raise the dead. But anyhow, yeah. So this was a little bit shorter than usual. I wanted to go and get a book because I wanted to actually read some of the spells of Isis. And I had a copy of the Book of the Dead. I had one copy and gave it to a friend of mine years ago. Then bought another copy and gave it to her again. So I got to buy another copy of the Books of the Dead so I can read y'all a spell that I found with Isis that I thought was pretty cool. But yeah, just remember that. Tie the knot of Auset. Bring the world of the living and the dead together. You can do it. It's the love that ties the knot anyway. And focus on the love, and that makes the grieving easier to bear. You're grieving because you love the person so much. And then if you feel like you're ready, or if you believe in it, Books that I recommend. Yeah, you can get they call it the Book of the Dead. The actual name for it is the Book of Coming Forth by Day. It was translated by a guy called E.A. Budge, and then it's the actual text, the funerary text of the ancient Egyptians, which had a lot of spells in it. But it's done pretty well because it will show you the spell and then give you an explanation because there's certain phrases in there that you might not understand because like certain turns of phrase are like confusing. So like there's one spell where they're talking about riding in the boat of Ra, the sun god, as he's traveling across the sky, and it said something about the face of a million years. But what does that mean? I don't know what that means. So they have like little notes that explain these little phrases that they may use. And it's also interesting too because when you read these books, when you read some of the spells, there's one spell in particular that I really liked that talks about how when you're traveling through the underworld, you can't just hold on one second. When you're traveling through the underworld, you can't just go. You have to put on the persona of a god. So you have to actually transform and become the god Horus in order to travel into the underworld so that you can meet the god Asar and survive. And that's kind of like a very important point. You have to understand that you got to become divine. That's ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt. They believed you had to become divine. That you had the potential to be divine. That all of us are inherently divine. We got to draw it out. And I thought that was really cool. My background in spirituality, I was raised when I was young as a Pentecostal Christian. Then for a little while, I was a Jehovah's Witness, and then after that, I, um, I found a book called The Religions of Man by Houston Smith, and that kind of opened up my mind to studying other kinds of religion. And I studied Islam for a very long time, but I'm one of those individuals that just study a little bit of everything. How you new here and curious? Well, we're glad to have you. We're glad to have you, Heidi. Hopefully, you come back next week. I'm in the middle of a series, Heidi, called Maladies of the Avatars. And what I've been talking about is how certain individuals in spirituality, theology, dealt with mental illness. They dealt with mental illness and they awakened and they overcame it. And so the first one I did was on Moses. Second one I did was on Buddha. The one I just did now was on Auset. And then I think I'll do Jesus Christ next week. And then after that, I think I'll do one on. I'll talk about what I was talking about earlier about manifestation. But yeah, a lot of the people who we worship and look up to as spiritual leaders and examples of spiritual mythological characters, they dealt with mental illness, and many of us deal with mental illness. So I think we can learn from those stories. But anyhow, yeah, peace and blessings to all of y'all. I'm about to take it to bed. Got an early day tomorrow, and just remember, man, you can have anything that you want. And you got to believe in yourself. Have anything that you want, believe in yourself. And for all of those who lost loved ones, all of those still feeling that pain, I feel your pain. I'm here for you, love you, and just try your best to stay focused on the love and understand that it's okay to be in pain. That's a necessary part of the healing process. Sometimes you feel pain because you're healing, and yeah, understand. Don't isolate. Don't isolate. Isolation is probably the worst thing you can do psychologically when you're suffering from pain of a lost loved one. Be around your friends, be around your family. There's actually a book I read called Solving People Problems for the Creation and Maintenance of Family Wealth. And one of the things they talk about earlier in the book is how a lot of times in ancient cultures, people would lose loved ones and the whole family had to get together because they believed that if you lost a loved one, the loved one had to be appreciated by everybody in the family. And if they weren't, then the loved one's soul would remain and would inhabit the body of one of the children that was still alive. So this is kind of a spiritual metaphor for repeating generational trauma. So we heal by coming together and by letting go. So yeah, don't isolate. I did that when my father passed away. I isolated and drank. And it was horrible. But then after my grandmother passed away, I didn't isolate. I spent a lot of time around family, hung out with the family at the funeral, and the healing process went much better during that time. All right, guys. But once again, we're gonna say good night. Peace and blessings to all of you. Thank you guys so much for stepping in with me tonight. I'll be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel, and I'll see y'all then. All right? Peace and blessings. Let's see if I can turn this off.